Hello, Mrs. Sanford. How are you doing today?
I'm good, just keeping busy with work and kids.
I know, it can be busy. I'm glad you're here today to go over Cody's test results. Well, as you know, Cody took the Iowa Tested Basic Skills on November 8th, and the test took place over the course of 3 days. This test was an achievement test. And achievement tests are given frequently to see what the child has been learning over the course of their education, and they are more specifically given to see if they are gaining the knowledge each year to ensure that they are ready for next year. Before we begin, I want to highlight that this test is somewhat a snapshot of Cody's knowledge. Several factors in the classroom also contribute to what they have learned, and I have Cody's portfolio here so you can see how these scores reflect what he is doing in the classroom, okay? At the top of the page are the demographics related to your child right here. We're going to start by looking at the top portion of the test, which is called the norm reference portion right here, okay? What this means is that before the test was given to the public, there were several tests given to the norm group of students of different learning abilities, such as socioeconomic status, race, gender, and demographics. This group of students is the national comparison that Cody is compared to. As you scan the norm reference portion of the results, do you see any questions about what the subjects are being tested?
No, I think I can see them all right there.
Great. If you see that you have some questions as I continue, please feel free to ask. The subjects of this are broken up into categories you see here. It says core total, which covers the basics of reading, language, and math. At the bottom, you see the composite, and this score contains.
The total of all of them with social studies and science?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the core subjects as well as social studies and science. Thank you. Within all of these subjects are subtests that are included in each of them. An example to the subtests would be here in reading. It is right here. There is reading there is vocabulary and reading comprehension. Now, as we look down at the norm reference portion of the results, there are several abbreviations for things. Let's start by looking at the first abbreviation, SS. SS is the abbreviation for standard score. Now, if we look at the bell curve, which is shown here in the bell curve handout, I have that you can see there are no labels for standard scores. This is because they are specific to whatever test is given. So if we wanted to imagine this was on a bell curve, we have to know that the range for the standard scores for this test is 181 to 223. If we look down through Cody's scores, we can see his scores fall within the standard score right here. What these scores also show is how reliable the results are. If Cody was to take the test again, these scores should remain with a +3 or -3 deviations if the test is successful in testing what it aims to each time. As we move over, we see GE. This stands for grade equivalent. Before we look at the results, the number before the decimal is years, and the number after the decimal is months. You can look through the scores here.
Okay. I see that Cody is scoring in the 5th grade range a lot. Does that mean he's ready to go to 5th grade already?
Not necessarily. While these results are excellent, we know that Cody isn't socially or emotionally ready for the content in the next grade yet, but he is definitely in a great position for understanding what comes next for him in the next grade. As we continue moving over the different scores, you see the NS. This stands for National Stanine. This can be found on the bell curve, shown right here. This is just another way to see that your child is learning, and it's probably the simplest way of learning at test results. As you see on the bell curve, the stanines are divided into 9 sections, right here. Sections 1 to 3 is below average, 4, 5, and 6 is average, and 7 and above is above average. You can see from Cody's test results that he is either scoring within average or above average in the Stay 9 score. An example on Cody's test here is we have obtained a 6 at the Stay 9 level. On the bell curve, this is about average. The limitations of national Stay 9s are that tend to be too general, meaning if we looked at another student's percentile rank, they may be quite different from one another, but as a Stay 9 score, they are similar. Now, for the final piece of the norm reference portion of the results is NPR, which is right here. This stands for National Percentile Rank. Keep in mind that these scores aren't like school grades, where a 75 would be a C. Rather, the 75 means that Cody scored 75% above the norm group of students that I mentioned earlier. Take a look at these results and let me know if you have any questions. If we look at the bell curve, we can see where national percentile ranks are placed on the curve. As you can see, 50 would be placed in the center as the medium average. To the right of the NPR percentages, you see the percentile rank graph, which is right here. This represents the NPR results. The dark shaded line down the center is the average student score as we saw on the bell curve. You can see if Cody scored around the same or above and below the national average of the norm group. Do you have any questions about the norm reference portion of the test?
No, I think I pretty much understand that.
Okay, great. Now we're going to move down to the criterion reference scores, which is down here. Instead of comparing Cody's scores to other students, these results assess what he is learning in specific areas of each subject to see if he has mastered them. I'm going to let you look at these areas and see if you have any questions.
I see that there's inference interpretation. What's that?
Okay, great question. When children are asked to make an inference or to interpret something from a text, they have to develop an idea of what the author is saying without the author saying it necessarily in the text. An example would be if the author said Sally was driving down the road and saw flashing lights ahead of her. As she drove closer, she saw an ambulance and a fire truck. In this example, students could interpret that Sally was coming up on a car accident. This is a reading strategy they are familiar with in the class. If you look at Cody's portfolio, I have specific examples of how he used inferences in his independent reading class and then documented in his journal, which you see right here, okay? Cody's extremely good at making inferences. Do you have any more questions before I move on?
No, I think that pretty much covered it.
Great. The first column is very easy. Total items next to the number attempted by Cody. As you can see, he puts great effort into attempting the problems rather than leaving them blank. We see that he is trying to attempt the questions. Next is percent correct by the students, which is right here. And so far, vocabulary out of 34 questions he attempted, he got 76% correct. The next column just shows you the percent correct for the norm group, which was 58%. Right there. And to the right, we have the visual of these percents.
The graph right there.
Yes, good job. The shaded area is the average norm group, and you can see that he is average and above average on many of the specific areas tested in this evaluation. For example, if we look through, we can see that Cody got 100% in measurement for math, right here. Does he like to measure things a lot?
He does. Sometimes when I cook at home, he'll help me measure the ingredients, so he likes to do that a lot.
How wonderful. I have some assignments here in the portfolio to show you how successful Cody is when conducting experiments with measurement. There are some great activities online that deal with measurement. Cody can do several measurement activities at home where he finds the area or perimeter of your house using different measuring tools. It seems that he really loves this aspect of hands-on math. As you look down, do you have any concerns of the scores that you see?
I also see that he only scored a 17% on words with affixes. Is there anything I can do to help him with that?
There were only 6 questions on this specific area, but in writing, children need to be aware of the appropriate affixes. A great way to practice at home is to have them write. Create a journal for them to write about their day and see how they are using this specific skill in their writing. You can show them examples in the newspaper or in the magazine of how to use affixes successfully. The point is that practice with many of these areas will help the child gain knowledge to master the skill.
Okay. I also see that he's above average in a lot of these areas. Are you doing anything in the classroom to keep him keep it going and not getting bored?
Of course. Children always want to be challenged when they have mastered a subject. In math, for instance, I will have a problem of the week that each child can see, and it requires multiple steps to solve. And they oftentimes must use things around the room to solve them. These problem-solving skills are just one way to challenge them in their learning. Do you have any other questions before we finish here? I know I have given you a lot of information.
No, you did a great job of covering it. I can just explain to my husband when I get home, but thank you so much.
Okay. Well, before you go, here's a copy of the results, along with the handout of the bell curve we used. I am more than delighted to work with Cody this year and look forward to seeing what is next for him. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.